Black Panther and Miles Morales have just been turned into vampires and are going to hunt the Avengers. I'm Andrew the Geek Master, and in this video, we're going to tell you how T'Challa and Miles became vampires in Marvel's new event, Blood Hunt. To make sure you don't miss stories like this, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, and let's get started. In this story, superhumans with connections to the Dark Force dimension worldwide simultaneously lost control of their powers. The eruption darkened the sun, creating an eternal night which allowed vampires everywhere to launch a coordinated attack against humanity. Earth's heroes did their best to protect the innocent and control the chaos. However, the Avengers were tricked into allowing the Blood Coven, a group of superpowered vampires, to enter their headquarters, the Impossible City. Fleeing, the Avengers were forced to leave Thor, Black Panther, and Scarlet Witch gravely injured at the hands of their new enemies. Blade, the vampire hunter, met with Doctor Strange and Clea at his sanctum, revealing that he is the mastermind behind the vampire invasion and mortally wounding Doctor Strange. The chapter begins in the Impossible City, which Blade considers an ancient home for monsters. Thor has become an inexhaustible source of blood for the vampires. Scarlet Witch was contained through magical runes. And the biggest revelation is that Black Panther was turned into a vampire. Still, T'Challa seems to be fighting his urges, but Blade knows that even the proud Atlantis that fought against the tides drowned. So the Lord of Vampires dispatches all his servants to Earth, where Black Panther will seek his prize, and the Blood Coven will hunt for Blade's daughter. In New York, we see a family being cornered by a pack of vampires, and all they have to defend themselves is a measly taser. It seemed like they had no chance of salvation until suddenly one of the vampires' heads is simply decapitated. The one responsible for this act is Bloodline, Blade's daughter, Brielle Brooks, who has abilities very similar to her father's, and she wastes no time using her weapons to exterminate the other vampires. But the girl is not alone. She is accompanied by Dracula himself, dressed in his strongest armor and wielding the most powerful sword of the vampire nation. According to the vampire, the world is ending, and he needs Bloodline to save it. He even scolds the girl for risking too much to save insignificant humans, reminding her that right now she is being hunted. And indeed, suddenly the two are confronted by a presence that is not revealed now, but it is certainly not pleasant. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Hunters Moon and Tigra are fighting several vampires with only one goal. They intend to reach Doctor Strange's house because they believe that the Sorcerer Supreme is humanity's best chance of ending this madness. In this, they are surprised by Miles Morales, who first startles them, and then reveals that he is also on his way to see Doctor Strange. Then the three join forces and finally reach the Sorcerer Supreme's house. Tigra knocks several times on Stephen Strange's door without any result until suddenly, to everyone's surprise, they are greeted by Doctor Strange's astral form. Tigra questions how Strange can be playing ghost with all this mess going on outside. And that's when Doctor Strange explains that he is in this astral form due to some complications with his physical body. As we saw in the first chapter, the hero was turned into a vampire by Blade himself, and Clea is doing what she can using the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak to restrain vampire Doctor Strange. Meanwhile, we see that Bloodline and Dracula were confronted by the Blood Coven, the deadly faction of vampires sent by Blade himself. Dracula remembers Bloodstorm 1 very well, who is a clone of himself. Therefore, Dracula makes sure to remind everyone that he is the Lord of Vampires. Bloodstorm 1 claims that Dracula is a false king and that they serve the true Lord of Vampires. However, at that moment, the vampires are surprised by the arrival of the Avengers. Yes, Captain Marvel, Captain America Sam Wilson, Iron Man, and Vision appear, stating that they have a lot to avenge. The vampires' reaction is quite amusing. They start mocking the heroes because they had just beaten them in the Impossible City, so they think it will be easy to defeat them again. But this time, the Avengers came prepared. As Bloodstorm 1 begins to give orders to his team members, Vision quickly grabs Megrim, that villain who feeds on thoughts. It is true that Vision's synthetic brain is very close to that of a human, which means Megrim can affect the hero. But Vision is cycling his own brain patterns so rapidly that the villain cannot access his mind. With Megrim out, there's nothing stopping Captain Marvel from focusing on the battle, and she furiously attacks Bloodstorm 1. She even mocks that at this very moment, Vision has crossed the Dark Force and exposed Megrim to sunlight, resulting in the villain's death. Captain America prevents Smoke Eater from inhaling that smoke that turns him into an almost unbeatable monster, ensuring that everyone will pay for what they did to the Panther. And while Dracula fights Damascene, the sharp villain who defeated Thor, Iron Man seeks his revenge against Cruel, the villain full of barbed wire. This time, Tony uses and abuses oscillating magnetic fields generated by his armor, preventing Cruel from hitting him. With this, Tony gains an extreme advantage until Damascene decides to intervene in the fight and plans to use the same blow that killed Thor. However, at that moment, Damascene is hit by some kind of solar beam that simply shatters the villain's arm. It turns out that Vision has returned from Earth's atmosphere, and he is overloaded with solar energy, which is the vampire's weakness. Afterwards, Captain Marvel fires a powerful energy that hits the Dark Force around the Earth, creating a small crack momentarily that brings a bit more sunlight. She says that even with half the strength, they are still the Avengers. And that means no matter how dark the night, they will ensure the sun will always rise again. This impressive display by the heroes makes the Blood Coven retreat through some kind of portal, promising they will return. Sam even tries to prevent them from escaping, but the villains were faster. Captain Marvel tries to comfort Captain America, stating that they will reclaim the impossible city and save their friends, while Bloodline tells Iron Man that they need to get to Greenwich Village. Then we jump to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where all the heroes gather, and Doctor Strange learns that they have already lost Thor, Wanda, and T'Challa. This leads Strange to reaffirm that they need to plan and act quickly before the worst happens. Bloodline is very happy to see Miles Morales here because, out of all of them, he is the only person she knows. The girl is very happy and begins to vent to Spider-Man, saying she can't find her father. However, at that moment, Miles begins to feel something inside him, and the chapter ends with Miles turning into a vampire. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of this bloody saga. To see the continuation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and leave your like to help us. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next adventure.